Hi, I'm Ketil Stoknes. I'm a biologist and researcher. I work in a Norwegian waste treatment company called Lindum, owned by the municipality of Drammen. I investigate how to connect organic waste treatment more directly with food production in the urban environment.
For most of our farm products, a large amount of fossil fuels are consumed, especially when producing meat, which is based on feeding animals with farm plant biomass. A steak, therefore, has a very large carbon footprint.
But even growing vegetables in the field emits carbon. Using figures from a typical study, this is the yield of potatoes on a certain area of field. These potatoes contain calories or energy for you to eat. That's the point of them, of course. Photosynthesis, meaning renewable solar energy, drives the growth of the potato plants and the formation of the starch calories within. Now, the trouble is that in addition to this solar energy input, an amount of fossil energy equal to these potatoes was spent on the farm to grow them. Of this technical energy input, this was related to the fertilizer production, transport of the fertilizer, etc. And the rest is mainly fuel. So we have a situation in ordinary farming where we spend 6 parts of fossil energy to produce 10. And this inefficiency is only on the farm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
What are you doing, Dad?
There's just the usual stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was in terms of energy use. Now let's look specifically on the fertilizer use. Let's say this is the amount of fertilizer used for an average crop. A lot of it is never taken up by the crop. It drains away into the environment somewhere, into a river, to the fjords, somewhere. Wasted. Down the drain. This amount is taken up by inedible parts of the crop, which is also waste. This part is taken up to the food crop product, but never eaten, wasted on its way. And this is the final part that's taken up in the food that you eat. Here comes another bag of juicy food waste. This weighs approximately 3 kilos. As an average European, I produce a number of bags like this per year.
In fact, 31 of these per year at home. In addition, I contribute 6 bags of waste during production on the farm, 11 during processing, 3 at the wholesale and retail stage, and 7 from food services. Some decades ago in Norway, this would end up in landfills like this one at Lindum, Drammen. Luckily, in Norway there is a ban on landfilling biowaste, but globally this is still the norm. A huge amount of organic waste ends up mixed with other stuff in landfills, emitting potent greenhouse gases. Today, Lindum has an anaerobic digestion plant or biogas plant. Plants like this produce methane fuel gas, but also CO2 and a digester residue containing all the nutrients called digestate. So waste in and 3 things out: fuel gas, CO2 and digestate. The digestate is where your food waste can be recycled back into new food production. Elements such as nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium are not converted to gas and remain in the digestate, and by using this as a fertilizer, nutrients re-enter the soil. This stuff also contains organic matter, feeding the soil microbes. This is sustainable. However, this can only be done in certain periods of the year and in areas in need of the phosphorus, which is not always the case. Milk and meat producing areas, for example, often have a surplus of phosphorus. Besides, as we can imagine, the loss of nutrients by evaporation and runoff might be just as serious as with mineral fertilizer.
So we have a food production based on fossil resources, which is extremely inefficient and where the products are transported around the world, generating a lot of waste. By collecting the wastes and turning them into renewable fuel and fertilizer, we improve the situation. It's certainly a good move. But can we imagine an even better, more closed solution? When the European Space Agency started developing a bioregenerative system for space, like on Mars,
they studied stable lake ecosystems to answer the fundamental question: what is the minimal ecosystem required to recycle waste and CO2 and to produce new food, oxygen and water for a population of larger animals within a restricted volume? Can a similar system be constructed to maintain a human crew in a confined environment in space?
I'll now go through in some detail what they came up with. So, here's a Martian and his crew. They produce wastes, organic wastes. They go to compartment 1, where the wastes are digested by thermophilic anaerobic bacteria. So, thermophilic, anaerobic without oxygen, bacteria. So the materials are turned into organic compounds such as volatile fatty acids, various minerals, and ammonium ions. There's also a need to do some fiber degradation for more resistant plant parts, etc. So here is fiber degradation. So some solution for that. So these materials, they are led to a second compartment. So compartment 2. Here they have chosen a red bacterium, which is both heterotrophic, meaning it can eat organic compounds, or perform photosynthesis, whatever is convenient. And this biomass is food for the crew. So, food. I hope Matt Damon likes more than potatoes. The minerals are then, and the ammonium, so minerals and still some ammonium, goes on to a third compartment. So compartment 3, and here we have nitrifying bacteria. Nitrifying bacteria. They convert the ammonium into nitrate. Nitrate. Then a fourth compartment is the higher plant compartment. So compartment 4 for plants, and also they have some green algae. The photosynthesis here needs CO2, and the other processes, they produce CO2. So CO2 from compartment 1, CO2 from the crew transpiring, and also CO2 from the heterotrophic activity of this bacterium. This boosts photosynthesis for the higher plants here. So the plants produce the food for the crew. I have to get a new pen. And also water from evaporation of the plants. And when this water condenses, the crew has clean drinking water. And also there are some remains, non-edible parts of plants, which can be led to compartment 1. So non-edible parts of plants. And the oxygen from the photosynthesis is also necessary here for the crew. And also this nitrification is an aerobic process, so oxygen also goes that way. So here we have the greenhouse compartment. This system is called the Microecological Life Support System Alternative, MELISSA. Now, what if we did the same thing here on Earth? As a matter of fact, that's exactly what we've done here at the Magiske Factory outside Tønsberg, Norway. At least to a large extent.
Organic waste from households is collected, made into a slurry, sanitized by heat in one tank to eliminate possible nasty bugs from chicken waste and so on, and pumped into the digesters. Here the conditions favor biogas producing microbes. So,
let's now look at the Earth alternative to a bioregenerative system. So, here we put the Earth, and instead of the Martian crew, we have some nice community. And the wastes, they are treated in an anaerobic digestion plant, a biogas plant. The fibers can be degraded in a composting plant. While in the space alternative, the digestion is kept at a very short retention time and low pH to avoid formation of methane. In a biogas digester, we allow enough time, large enough volume to let microbes that form methane develop. So we get methane. So after separating it from the CO2, we have bus fuel for the community. And so this is the digestate.
the digestate contains all the juicy organics. This stuff is still in a way food. is not only ions or salts or single dissolved molecules as in mineral fertilizer. The junk food part of it, sugars, fat, the calories, went into the gas phase as bus fuel, but the more resistant organic material still remains. The digestate can be passed through a screen or a screw separator. The result is a liquid part and a solid, fiber-rich part. How is resistant stuff like fiber dealt with in natural ecosystems? By fungi. These degraders normally live their life in the forest floor as tiny threads of mycelium. However, the mycelium part of their life stage can be done in an enclosed volume of some kind, large or small. In this bag we've combined the digestate with another organic waste to make the fungus happy, straw from grain production. Both liquid and solid forms of digestate can be used to mix a mushroom compost. The mix is composted aerobically, meaning with oxygen, but only shortly, then pasteurized on exactly 60 degrees Celsius before conditioning on 50 degrees to make it a selective substrate where only the mycelium of the cultivated mushroom species will grow, and not green molds or other hungry bugs which would love to feast on it if you don't follow this exact recipe. In order to lure the actual mushrooms out, you need a colder chamber with fresh, moist air to create something like an indoor autumn forest. With ordinary button mushrooms, a high yield can be achieved. We grew 1 kilogram of mushrooms from 1 dry matter kilogram of substrate. That's a feed conversion factor of 1. Mushrooms are very nutritious food. It has a high content of proteins, dietary fiber, minerals, and some, like this almond mushroom, even compounds boosting your immune system. For a balanced, satisfying dish, try fried almond mushrooms with rice and cherry tomatoes. In addition, an advantage of mushrooms over meat is that they don't infect humans with nasty viruses.
So now we have swapped the probably rather untasty red bacterium with delicious juicy mushrooms, which go back to the community as protein-rich food, substituting meat. Conventional mushroom farms often use a lot of fossil fuel for steam production. Here we can use the biogas as a source of heat for the production. So what do we have now? We have mushrooms, we have spent mushroom compost. So what remains after harvesting the mushrooms? Spent mushroom compost. We have CO2 produced by the mushrooms. And we have still lots of digestate, so we can even let it pass here. So in the earth alternative, we can use an industrial greenhouse to grow plants. And what do we have to grow plants in this greenhouse? We have spent mushroom compost, we also have green waste compost available, and we have digestate.
When we started experimenting with growing tomatoes in compost with digestate, we failed again and again. What's the difference from using a regular fertilizer? It was not just a matter of the correct balance of elements in the material. How are the plants grown most efficiently in commercial greenhouses?
Okay, hydroponics is a very common way to grow plants. I have a hydroponic system just here. It's not to grow vegetables, but to humidify and clean the air, and to look nice or weird. But it illustrates the point. Hydroponic growing means you grow plants in an inert substrate. Here, leca, expanded clay balls. Then you just add the mineral fertilizer, the fertilizer solution directly to the system. Only what the plants need.
This is the way it's done in large commercial greenhouses, producing the plants you buy at the supermarket. So no soil, just the mineral fertigation the plants need.
What would happen if I, instead of adding pure mineral fertilizer to a system like this, if I added some kind of organic waste product, slurry, into the system? Well, it will start degrading, consuming oxygen and then probably suffocating the plant roots. Smelling as well, probably, going anaerobic, and the nutrients won't be available in the right form. So this is where compartment 3 comes in. The organics in the digestate need to be further converted before being fed to the plants aerobically, so strong aeration is needed somewhere here. And especially nitrogen, when proteins degrade amino acids and then ammonia is formed. However, what most vegetable plants prefer is nitrate. In natural environments, there are nitrifying bacteria doing this job. Compost contains such microbes, for instance, but this process needs to be efficient enough in an intensive indoor system. In the space system, they therefore chose to make this a separate compartment in the form of a reactor. What we found out for a commercial greenhouse system was that we could integrate this process directly into the irrigation water recirculation system, much like in aquaponics, by taking advantage also of the high microbial diversity of the compost-based growing medium.
This is the ecosystem we came up with after years of failing, which we've termed digiponics. We grow the crops in pure compost, green waste compost, earthworm compost and spent mushroom compost. We add digestate solids to the plant growing container. Here a high density of composting earthworms crawl about eating the digestate. We add liquid digestate into the water reservoir to increase nitrogen and potassium in the system, while solids contain phosphorus, magnesium, calcium and that sort of stuff. We use special nozzles which don't clog. Moreover, we have a very efficient aeration system based on a mixture of micro and nano bubbles. Very small bubbles don't float. They have the same density as water and therefore follow the water flow into the root zone. This intensive aeration is necessary because we add so much biomass which consumes oxygen in the system. So this is a complete and natural system of plants, microbes and soil-dwelling animals. And of course, in addition, we use insects for biocontrol and pollination. In this infrared time-lapse video, earthworms living in a tomato growing bag come up to feast on a scoop of digestate added to the bag. After 1 week, the stuff is pulled in, nutrients converted and distributed to the entire root zone. So the earthworms are the free-working tractors of our indoor system.
And the result is that the entire greenhouse is a giant earthworm reactor.
And this is why, after a cropping cycle, the soil is very fertile, teeming with life, still rich in nitrogen, and can be used for other crops, or possibly again for the same crops, which we'll also test in the future.
So we also have potting soil here as a product for the community. The last part of our practical research for achieving a circular life system for Earth relates to the integration of mushroom culture with plant culture. We wanted to know to which degree the mycelium of cultivated mushrooms would benefit the growth of vegetable plants. Biologists know that there are many types of symbiotic fungi like mycorrhizal and so on that benefit plant roots. But what about saprotrophic macrofungi like the cultivated agaricus mushrooms?
In nature, here the urban jungle of Oslo, agaricus fungi may form fairy rings. They clearly release nutrients by degrading recalcitrant biomass. A zone of dark green lush vegetation follows after the mycelium has advanced. What if we could mimic this process in the greenhouse? We investigated both live and dead spent mushroom compost, dead being steamed, as well as young actively growing mycelium taken from before mushroom harvesting to see its effect when mixing it into the growing medium. So we are talking about this material, remaining after mushroom cropping has finished. We made a range of experiments and found out that if the mycelium in the spent mushroom compost was still alive and growing, it apparently competed with the plant roots for resources. Mycelium and roots were avoiding each other. We actually grew the heat-loving almond mushroom in the same container as cucumbers by adding a substantial volume of fresh live mushroom compost under the growing medium. The containers with steamed mushroom compost yielded much more cucumbers than those with non-steamed living mushroom yielding compost. In fact, containers with steamed mushroom compost also grew significantly more cucumbers than another treatment in which the mushroom compost had been substituted with an inert growing medium. The same effect was also seen in several lettuce experiments, indicating that spent mushroom compost can boost plant growth when it's pacified. Thus, it serves as a sustainable peat substitute. Our experiments found that spent mushroom compost helped release nutrients from the other composts.
In total, we have a full ecosystem of natural organisms and processes returning wastes back to the community in the form of new food and potting soil. And nothing is wasted. And the products has close to zero carbon footprint. By being more closed,
and in our system using a greenhouse insulated by a dynamic soap bubble layer inside the walls, it not only conserves energy, nutrients and carbon, but it also greatly conserves water. Water is not an expensive commodity in Norway. We have almost endless volumes of clean, fresh water, but lack of it is a major challenge for food production globally. By going indoors in a controlled dynamic environment, we can potentially use water again and again while optimizing growing conditions. By using earthworms and compost, it also seems we suppress disease, as opposed to what is seen in attemptedly sterile plant factories. As long as we keep the worms happy, the plants are happy and the tomatoes taste great.
This was Ketil Stoknes. Check out more about circular food on the links. Thanks for now.